Senna didn't know the Alpha King could see through glamours. She didn't know he'd been searching for her bloodline for 7 years, hunting through villages and slave markets, and every forgotten corner of the realm. And she definitely didn't know that the curse meant to make her repulsive was the very thing that would save her life. All she knew was that her feet were bleeding inside borrowed shoes, and the woman dragging her toward the altar wanted her dead before sunset. "Stand straight," Lady Revna hissed, her fingers digging into Senna's arm hard enough to bruise. "You're an offering to the king, not a sack of rotting grain." Senna forced her spine rigid, though every instinct screamed at her to run. The great hall of Valdrin stretched before her, cavernous and cold, filled with nobles who turned to stare as she passed. She heard the whispers, felt them like knives. Look at her face. Is that the best the Eastern Territories could offer? The king will reject her on sight, probably have her executed for the insult. Senna kept her eyes fixed on the stone floor. She'd seen her reflection this morning in the water basin, and the creature staring back had made her stomach lurch. Mottled skin stretched tight over sharp bones, patches of hair missing from her scalp, eyes that seemed too large, too hollow, ringed with bruised shadows. She hadn't always looked like this. 3 weeks ago, she'd been plain but whole. A servant in Lady Revna's household, invisible and unremarkable. Then Revna had summoned her to the private chambers, forced something bitter down her throat, and Senna had woken looking like a monster. "The king demands an Omega bride from each territory," Revna had explained, smiling like a cat with cream. "I'm required to send one, but I never specified she had to survive the claiming." Senna had understood then. Revna's own daughter, Ismeni, was meant for the throne. A beautiful, cruel girl with her mother's ambition. But tradition demanded the king choose from the offerings first. If those offerings were unacceptable, he'd reject them all. And Revna could present Ismeni as a gracious alternative. All Senna had to do was die. The altar loomed ahead, carved from black stone veined with silver. 2 other Omegas already stood there, both trembling, both beautiful in the way noble daughters were bred to be. They shifted away from Senna as she approached, horror flickering across their faces. Senna took her place at the end of the line, the furthest from the throne, the easiest to overlook. She could feel Revna's satisfaction radiating from the crowd. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Then the drums stopped. The hall fell silent, and Senna felt it before she saw it. A weight in the air, a pressure against her skin that made her wolf stir for the first time in weeks. She raised her eyes. The Alpha King was staring directly at her. Not at the beautiful Omegas, not at the nobles, at her. And he was smiling. Senna's blood turned to ice. The king descended from his throne with the fluid grace of a wolf who'd never known fear. He was nothing like the stories. Older, battle-scarred, and cruel. He was young, perhaps 30, with sharp features softened by something that might have been curiosity. His hair was dark as ink, pushed back from a face that belonged on ancient coins. But it was his eyes that held her. Pale amber, almost gold, burning with an intensity that made her want to bare her throat and flee in equal measure. He walked past the first Omega without a glance, past the second, who let out a small whimper of despair. He stopped in front of Senna. The silence in the hall was absolute. She could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the confused murmurs building behind her like a coming storm. "What's your name?" His voice was low, rough-edged, meant for war councils and whispered commands. Senna's throat locked. No one had asked her name in weeks. She'd become the ugly one, the creature, the offering. "Senna," she managed. "Senna of Thornwick." Something flickered in those golden eyes. Recognition? No, that was impossible. She was no one. Thornwick. He repeated it slowly like he was tasting the word. "The village that burned 7 years ago." Senna flinched. She never spoke of Thornwick, never thought of the flames, the screaming. her mother pushing her through a gap in the burning wall. "Run, little one. Run and don't look back." "You survived," the king continued, his gaze never leaving her face. "I wondered if any of them had." "I don't—" Senna's voice cracked. "I don't understand." He leaned closer, close enough that she caught his scent. Pine and winter storms and something darker beneath. Close enough that his next words were for her alone. "Who did this to you?" Senna's eyes widened. "Did what?" "The glamour." His jaw tightened. "Someone cursed you to appear this way. I want to know who." She couldn't breathe. He could see. Somehow, impossibly, he could see past the twisted mask Revna had forced onto her. But how? Why? And what did it mean that he was looking at her, like she was something precious rather than something to be discarded? "My Lord King," Revna's voice cut through the tension, honey-sweet and poison-sharp. She emerged from the crowd, elegant in crimson silk. "I see you've noticed my territory's humble offering. I must apologize for her appearance. We hoped her inner qualities might compensate for her unfortunate exterior." The king straightened but didn't turn. "Did you?" "Naturally, if she fails to please, I have my own daughter prepared." "She doesn't fail to please." The king's voice dropped to something dangerous. "She pleases me very much." The hall erupted. Senna watched chaos unfold like she was drowning, and the surface was impossibly far above. Nobles shouted over each other. The other two Omegas burst into tears. Whether from relief or fury, she couldn't tell. And Revna's face cycled through shock, rage, and calculation so quickly it was almost impressive. "Your Majesty." Revna's composure returned, brittle but intact. "Surely you're not serious. This girl is— Look at her. She's afflicted. Diseased, perhaps. To claim her would be— Would be what?" The king turned now, and Senna saw the predator beneath the composed surface. "Please, Lady Revna. Finish your thought." Revna hesitated. She was treading on dangerous ground, and she knew it. But ambition made people reckless. "It would be beneath your station," she said carefully. "The realm expects strength in their queen, beauty that reflects the crown's glory. This creature offers neither." "This creature," the king said softly, "has more noble blood in her smallest finger than your entire lineage combined." The words landed like a slap. Revna went white. Senna's mind reeled. Noble blood? She was a servant, an orphan from a burned village. Her mother had been a seamstress, her father a woodcutter. There was nothing noble about her. The king raised his hand, and the hall fell silent once more. 7 years ago, the village of Thornwick was razed by raiders. What most don't know is that Thornwick was a sanctuary, a hidden refuge for the last survivors of the Ashbourne line. His gaze found Senna again, and there was something almost gentle in it. "The royal bloodline that ruled these lands before my grandfather's conquest." Senna shook her head. "That's not— My mother was—" "Your mother was Ashbourne," the king said, "and so are you." The revelation hit her like a physical blow. She swayed, and his hand shot out, steadying her elbow. The contact sent a shock through her system, electricity and warmth, and something deeper that made her wolf howl. "I've been searching for Ashbourne survivors since I took the throne," he continued, speaking only to her now. "The realm was never at peace after the conquest. The land itself rejected my grandfather's line. Crops failed. Winters grew harsh. The old magic faded." He paused. "The only way to restore balance is to reunite the bloodlines. Valdrin needs an Ashbourne queen." "You need my blood," Senna whispered. "For magic. I need you." The correction was firm. "As my partner, my equal, my mate, if you'll have me." "And if I refuse?" "Then you walk free." His thumb brushed her elbow, unconscious or deliberate. She couldn't tell. "I won't force a bond, but I'll protect you regardless. You're the last of your line, Senna. There are people who would kill you for that." His eyes flicked to Revna, and Senna understood. Revna had known. had always known. The curse wasn't just to make her ugly, it was to ensure she'd be rejected and executed, to eliminate the Ashbourne threat before anyone discovered the truth. She tried to have me killed, Senna said slowly. Yes. The king's voice was ice, and she'll answer for it. But first, I need your decision. He released her elbow and stepped back, giving her space. Come with me willingly as my betrothed, and I swear on my blood and my throne, I will break this curse, protect you from your enemies, and give you the choice to leave if you're ever unhappy. Before you continue, please take 2 seconds to like this video. The hall held its breath. Revna's face was a mask of barely contained fury. The other Omegas watched with wide eyes, and Senna stood at the crossroads of her life, a servant with royal blood and a monster's face, being offered everything by a king who saw through curses. Why should I trust you? She asked. You shouldn't. His honesty startled her. Trust is earned. I'm asking for a chance to earn it. Senna looked at Revna, who had stolen her face and planned her death. Looked at the cold hall full of nobles who'd sneered at her. Looked at the king, who offered his hand like she was worth something. She took it. Then I'll come with you. Calder's fingers closed around hers, warm and steady, and she felt that electric pulse again. Stronger now, deliberate. Then before this court and these witnesses, he announced, his voice carrying to every corner. I, Calder of House Valdrin, Alpha King of the Northern Realm, claim Senna of the Ashbourne as my chosen bride. The bond snapped into place like a key turning in a lock, and Senna's cursed face began to crack. The pain was exquisite. Senna gasped as heat blazed across her skin, starting where Calder's hand gripped hers and spreading outward like wildfire. She felt the curse fighting back, clinging to her bones, but something stronger was tearing it loose. The bond. She could feel him now, not just his hand, but his presence. A steady pulse of power and protectiveness that wrapped around her like armor, and beneath it, threading through the connection, something raw and wanting that made her breath catch. Don't fight it, Calder murmured, stepping closer. His free hand came up to cup her jaw, tilting her face toward his. Let it break. Senna's vision blurred. She was dimly aware of screaming from the crowd, Revna's voice, shrill and furious, demanding guards, demanding intervention. But the king's warriors had already moved, forming a wall between them and the chaos. Another crack, another wave of agony. Then, like ice shattering in spring, the glamour fell away. Senna sagged against Calder's chest, trembling violently. His arms came around her instantly, holding her upright, holding her together. She pressed her face into his shirt and breathed in that scent, wood smoke and cold rain and the promise of shelter, until her heartbeat steadied. Look at me, he said softly. She raised her head. His expression stole what remained of her breath. He was looking at her like she was the first sunrise after endless winter, like she was something he'd been waiting for his entire life. There you are, he whispered. Senna didn't know what she looked like now, but she could feel the difference. Her skin no longer pulled tight. Her scalp no longer ached with missing patches. Her face felt like hers again. How? Her voice came out hoarse. The bond. His thumb traced her cheekbone. Reverent. Ashbourne magic and Valdrin magic. They were always meant to be joined. The curse couldn't survive the connection. You knew this would happen? I hoped. He pulled back slightly, though his hands remained on her waist, steadying her. The old texts spoke of it, but hope and certainty are different things. Behind them, Revna's screaming had stopped. Senna turned to see the lady being restrained by 2 warriors, her face contorted with rage. This isn't over, Revna spat. You've been tricked, Your Majesty. That girl is no Ashbourne. She's a common servant I plucked from the kitchens. Whatever you think you've bonded with. Lady Revna. Calder's voice cut through hers like a blade. You cursed a woman of royal blood. You attempted to engineer her death. You committed treason against the crown before 500 witnesses. He paused. I suggest you stop talking before you make this worse. Revna's mouth snapped shut, but her eyes promised violence. Calder turned back to Senna. Can you walk? I think so. Good. His hand found hers again, fingers interlacing. That spark flared between them, gentler now, but no less present. Because we need to leave. Now. Where are we going? His jaw tightened. Somewhere Revna's allies can't reach you while I sort out exactly how deep this conspiracy runs. Senna looked at their joined hands, at the king who'd seen through her curse, at the chaos erupting behind them. Then she gripped his fingers tighter. Lead the way. The king's private fortress was nothing like Valdrin's cold grandeur. They rode through the night, Senna mounted on a silver mare that moved like flowing water, Calder beside her on a beast of pure black. 12 warriors flanked them, silent and watchful. No one spoke. The only sounds were hoofbeats and wind, and the occasional cry of a hunting owl. Dawn broke as they crested a ridge, and Senna saw it. Iron Haven. The fortress rose from the mountainside like it had grown there, all dark stone and sharp towers softened by climbing ivy and windows that caught the morning light. A waterfall cascaded down the cliffs behind it, feeding a river that wound through the valley below. It was beautiful, fierce, and ancient, and somehow alive. My mother's family built this place, Calder said, reining his horse beside hers. 300 years ago. It's warded against glamours, curses, and uninvited guests. He glanced at her. You'll be safe here. Safe. The word felt foreign. Senna couldn't remember the last time she'd felt safe. The gates opened as they approached, and servants spilled out to take horses and offer warm cloaks. Everyone moved with quiet efficiency, but Senna caught the curious glances, the whispered questions. Who is she? Why is she with the king? Is that the new queen? She wasn't a queen. She was a kitchen servant with borrowed shoes and a bloodline she'd never asked for. Come. Calder's hand touched her lower back, guiding her forward. You need rest. Food. Time to process everything. The great hall was warm, heated by enormous hearths at either end. Tapestries lined the walls. Not battle scenes like in Valdrin, but forests, rivers, wolves running under moonlight. A woman waited by the fire, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with the bearing of someone who had seen empires rise and fall. Grandmother, Calder said, may I present Senna of the Ashbourne? The woman's gaze swept over Senna, assessing, measuring. Whatever she found must have satisfied her, because she inclined her head in a gesture of respect. So, you found one after all. Her voice was dry, crackling like autumn leaves. I was beginning to think the bloodline had died out completely. So was I. Calder's tone carried something Senna hadn't heard before. Relief, vulnerability, and the exhaustion of a man who'd been carrying hope like a boulder for years. I'm Dowager Helwyn, the woman said to Senna. Calder's grandmother and the closest thing to a mother he has, since his actual mother is a scheming serpent who should have been drowned at birth. Senna blinked. His mother? Lady Revna is a distant cousin by marriage. She wed into a minor branch of my father's family, then used that connection to worm her way into ruling the Eastern Territories, Calder said, his expression darkening. That's how she ended up controlling who got sent to the selection. She's been positioning her daughter Ismene for queenship ever since my father died. Revna is... Senna's head spun. She's your family? Unfortunately. Helwyn snorted. Family is generous. Parasite is more accurate. She waved a hand at a servant. Take the girl to the eastern chambers, the ones with the good light. She looks half dead. Senna wanted to protest, wanted answers, wanted to understand what was happening, but her body chose that moment to remind her she'd been cursed, bonded, and ridden through the night without sleep. She swayed. Calder caught her before she could fall, sweeping her into his arms like she weighed nothing. I can walk. she managed weakly. You can barely stand. His voice was gruff but gentle. Let me do this. Too tired to argue, Senna let her head fall against his shoulder. He carried her through corridors she was too exhausted to memorize, upstairs that seemed to go on forever, until finally he laid her on a bed softer than clouds. Sleep, he said. We'll talk when you wake. Promise? Something flickered in his golden eyes. I promise. She was unconscious before he reached the door. Senna woke to afternoon light and the smell of bread. For a long moment, she didn't move. Just lay there, staring at the canopy above her, deep green velvet embroidered with silver moons, and tried to convince herself this was real. The soft mattress, the warmth of furs piled around her, the absence of aching joints and mottled skin. She raised her hand, smooth, unblemished, hers. A knock at the door made her sit up quickly. Come in. A young woman entered carrying a tray laden with food. Bread, cheese, sliced fruit. A steaming cup of something that smelled like herbs and honey. She had copper hair and freckles and a smile that seemed genuine rather than practiced. His Majesty asked me to bring you breakfast. Well, lunch now. She set the tray on a small table by the window. I'm Brielle. I'll be your attendant while you're here. My attendant? Senna shook her head. I don't need... King's orders. Brielle's smile widened. And between us, it's safer not to argue with him when he's in protective mode. He's been pacing outside your door for the last hour. Senna's heart did something strange. He has? Nearly wore a groove in the stone. Brielle moved to a wardrobe and pulled out a dress. Simple but beautiful, deep burgundy wool with silver embroidery at the cuffs. I'll leave you to eat and dress. When you're ready, he's asked to see you in the library. After Brielle left, Senna ate mechanically, her mind churning. The bond hummed beneath her skin, a constant awareness of Calder's presence somewhere in the fortress. She could feel his restlessness, his impatience, his worry. She dressed quickly and followed the directions Brielle had given her. The library was vast, floor-to-ceiling shelves packed with leather-bound volumes, maps covering every table, and windows overlooking the waterfall. Calder stood by one of those windows, his back to her, tension visible in the set of his shoulders. You're awake. He turned, and relief washed across his features. How do you feel? Strange. Senna crossed to the nearest table, needing something to focus on besides the intensity of his gaze. Like I'm wearing someone else's life. It's yours. He moved closer. It was always yours. Revna just hid it from you. About that? Senna traced the edge of a map, the northern realm, she realized, with territories marked in different colors. You said the conspiracy might run deep. What did you mean? Calder's jaw tightened. I've been receiving reports this morning. Revna didn't act alone. He pulled a leather folder from beneath a stack of books and opened it, spreading documents across the table. Letters, financial records, a list of names. She's been corresponding with Lord Morkant of the Southern Reach and Lady Voss from the coastal territories. Both have daughters of marriageable age. Both have been vocal about the throne needing a proper queen. Senna scanned the letters, her stomach sinking. They were planning to ensure no suitable Omega reached you. Not just planning, executing. Calder pointed to a section of coded text. This references 3 Omegas from previous selections, women who had accidents before they could be presented. Falls from horses. Sudden illnesses. A drowning. They were murdered. Yes. His voice was flat, but she felt his rage through the bond. A cold, controlled fury waiting to be unleashed. And you would have been the 4th if I hadn't recognized the glamour. Senna looked up at him. How did you recognize it? Revna said it was the strongest curse money could buy. My grandmother taught me to see through illusions when I was a child. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. She said a king who could be fooled by appearances wouldn't last a year on the throne. Smart woman. Terrifying woman. But yes. Senna returned to the documents, a particular name catching her attention. Who is Fenric? Calder went still. Where did you see that name? She pointed to a letter near the bottom of the pile. A single line, almost a postscript. Fenric confirms the Ashbourne girl will be no threat. The bloodline ends with her. Fenric, Calder said slowly, is my cousin. Revna's son. Ismini's brother? Yes, he serves on my council, has access to... He trailed off, realization dawning. To intelligence reports, troop movements, the search records for Ashbourne survivors. Senna felt cold despite the fire crackling nearby. He's been feeding them information. For years, apparently. Calder swept the documents back into the folder, his movements sharp with barely contained fury. He knew I was searching, knew I was getting close, and he's been sabotaging me at every turn while smiling to my face. What are you going to do? What I should have done the moment I suspected something was wrong. He met her eyes, and she saw the king beneath the man, ruthless, calculating, and ready for war. I'm going to let them think they've won. Let them believe you're still cursed and isolated. And then I'm going to dismantle their entire network before they realize what's happening. He reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek. But first, I need to know you're safe. That no matter what happens next, they can't touch you. Senna's breath caught. How? By completing the bond. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. If we fully mate, Calder continued, our connection becomes unbreakable. I'll be able to find you anywhere, feel if you're in danger, protect you even when I'm not physically present. And you'll be able to control me. Senna hadn't meant to say it, but the fear slipped out anyway. Calder's hand dropped. He stepped back, hurt flickering across his features before he schooled them into neutrality. No, the bond doesn't work that way. It's a bridge, not a chain. He paused. But I understand why you'd fear that. You barely know me. You've spent weeks being controlled, cursed, and treated like property. He moved to the window, giving her space. I won't ask you to complete the bond until you're ready, if you're ever ready. The partial bond we have now offers some protection. It will have to be enough. Senna watched his reflection in the glass. The tension in his shoulders, the careful way he held himself apart from her. He was giving her a choice. Again. What if they come for me before I decide? Calder turned. Then I'll burn their entire world to ash. The certainty in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it made her feel something she hadn't felt in years. Protected. Show me more, she said, gesturing to the documents. Everything you know about them. If I'm going to be part of this fight, I want to understand what we're facing. Something shifted in Calder's expression. Respect, maybe, or the beginning of it. Are you sure? They tried to kill me. Senna lifted her chin. I want to watch them fall. For the first time since they'd met, Calder smiled. A real smile, fierce and warm. Then let's get to work. The next 3 days changed everything. Senna had expected to be sequestered, protected, and treated like a fragile relic of a dead bloodline. Instead, Calder treated her like a partner. Every morning they met in the library to review intelligence reports. Every afternoon she trained with Brielle. Basic self-defense, how to hold a knife, how to break free from a grip. Every evening they dined together, sometimes with Helwyn, sometimes alone. She learned that Calder hated formal dinners but loved the kitchen's honey cakes. That he'd taken the throne at 22 after his father died from a wasting sickness that the healers couldn't explain. That he suspected poison but could never prove it. She learned that he read philosophy before bed and sparred with his warriors at dawn. That he remembered every name of every servant in Ironhaven. That his wolf emerged when his emotions ran high, gold bleeding into his eyes, canines lengthening when he was angry or protective, or, increasingly, when he looked at her. And she learned that the bond between them was growing stronger every day. It started as a whisper, awareness of his presence, his moods, his general direction. By the third day, it was a constant hum beneath her skin. She knew when he was frustrated with council reports, felt his amusement when Helwyn made sharp comments about his mother's side of the family, sensed his restlessness at night, pacing his chambers 2 floors above hers. She tried not to think about what that restlessness meant. On the third evening, Senna found herself on the eastern tower, watching the sun sink behind the mountains. The waterfall roared in the distance, mist rising like ghosts. She'd needed air, space, a moment away from the intensity of being near Calder. The bond made it impossible to ignore him, made her hyper-aware of every glance, every accidental brush of fingers, and every moment his voice dropped low when they were alone. She heard him before she saw him, footsteps on stone, steady and unhurried. Then he was beside her, leaning against the parapet, close enough that she could feel his warmth. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, couldn't stop thinking. "About?" "You," she thought. "Always you." "Everything?" she said instead. 3 weeks ago, I was scrubbing floors and trying to survive until morning. Now I'm in a fortress, reading treason reports, training with knives." She shook her head. "It doesn't feel real." "Which part?" She turned to look at him. The fading light caught his features, softening the sharp edges, making him look younger. Less like a king, more like a man carrying weight he'd never asked for. "All of it." She paused. "You, most of all." Something shifted in his expression. "What about me doesn't feel real?" "The way you look at me." The words escaped before she could stop them. "Like I matter. Like I'm not just useful because of my blood." Calder was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "Do you know what I thought the first time I saw you? Before I realized who you were? Before I saw through the glamour? That I was a monster? That you were brave." He turned to face her fully. "You walked into that hall knowing everyone would despise you, knowing you'd probably die. And you held your head up anyway. You didn't beg, didn't cower. You just endured." His hand came up, hovering near her face but not touching. "I thought, whoever cursed this woman wanted to destroy her. And they failed. Because nothing they did could break what she is underneath." Senna's throat tightened. "You couldn't have known that." "I knew." His fingers finally made contact, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "And then the glamour fell, and you were beautiful. And I thought—" He stopped, jaw working. "Thought what?" "That I was in serious trouble." Despite everything, Senna laughed. "The Alpha King? In trouble because of a kitchen servant?" "The Alpha King," he corrected softly, completely undone by a woman who has every reason to distrust him but keeps choosing to stay anyway. The air between them thickened. She could feel his heartbeat through the bond, faster than usual, could feel her own matching it. "Calder, I know." His thumb traced her cheekbone and she shivered. "It's too fast. Too much. You've been through hell, and the last thing you need is me pressuring you." Senna kissed him. She didn't plan it. Didn't think. Just rose on her toes and pressed her mouth to his, swallowing whatever noble protest he'd been about to make. For one terrible second, he went rigid. Then his arms wrapped around her, pulling her against him, and he kissed her back with a desperation that stole her breath. His hands tangled in her hair. His mouth moved over hers like he was starving and she was sustenance. The bond between them blazed, bright and fierce, and Senna felt herself dissolving into it, into him. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, his forehead pressed to hers. "Senna." Her name was a prayer on his lips. "Tell me to stop. Tell me this is too fast, too complicated, too dangerous." "It's all of those things." "Then, I don't care." She gripped the front of his shirt, holding him close. "I spent my whole life being careful, being invisible, surviving." Her voice cracked. I'm tired of surviving. I want to live. And when I'm with you, I feel alive for the first time in years. Calder made a sound low in his throat, something between a groan and a growl. You're going to be the death of me. Probably. She smiled against his mouth. But not tonight. He kissed her again, softer this time, slower, like they had all the time in the world. They didn't. But for one perfect moment, standing on that tower with the stars emerging above them, Senna let herself believe they did. The attack came the next morning. Senna was in the library reviewing maps of the Southern Reach when the Bond screamed a warning. Not a whisper, not a hum. A violent surge of wrongness that made her double over. Calder. She ran. The corridors blurred past her. Servants shouted questions she didn't hear. She followed the pull of the Bond, letting it guide her through passages she'd never memorized, downstairs she'd never climbed. She found him in the great hall, standing over a body. Fenric. The man was on his knees, bleeding from a wound in his shoulder, 2 warriors holding him in place. Calder stood before him, and the King Senna saw now was nothing like the man who'd kissed her beneath the stars. This was the executioner, the ruthless monarch. Gold blazed in his eyes and his voice was ice. Say that again. Fenric laughed, blood on his teeth. You heard me, cousin. The girl is already dead. Poison in her morning tea. By now, her heart should be... Calder's head snapped toward the doorway, toward Senna. The relief that crashed through the Bond nearly drove her to her knees. Impossible, Fenric breathed, his smile faltering. The dose was lethal. She should be... I didn't drink it. Senna stepped forward, her legs steadier than they had any right to be. Something tasted wrong, bitter beneath the honey. Fenric's face twisted. Ashbourne senses. Of course. The old bloodline could detect... He cut himself off, but too late. Could detect poison, Calder finished, his voice deadly quiet. Which is why my grandfather's conquest required deception rather than direct assassination. Why the Ashbourne were slaughtered in their beds rather than killed at feasts. He crouched before Fenric. You knew. Your mother told you everything about the bloodline, every strength, every weakness. We did what was necessary. Fenric's composure cracked, desperation bleeding through. The realm needs our blood on the throne, not some mongrel line of hedge witches and forest dwellers. Revna should have been queen. I should have been heir. Instead, you'll be a corpse. Kill me then. Fenric's smile returned, thin and vicious. It won't matter. My mother is already moving. Your little fortress won't protect the girl forever. And when Revna finds her, and she will, she'll finish what the poison started. Calder stood. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he turned to his warriors. Take him to the cells. Keep him alive. He has information I need. After Fenric was dragged away, Calder crossed to Senna. His hands framed her face, tilting it up, searching her eyes. You're certain you're not hurt? I'm fine. I didn't drink enough to... I felt it. His voice shook. Through the Bond. I felt fear that wasn't mine, and I thought... He pulled her against his chest, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. I thought I'd lost you. Senna pressed her face into his shirt, breathing him in. I'm here. I'm safe. You're not safe. He pulled back, his expression hardening. Revna knows where you are. She'll come with everything she has. Then let her come. Senna, no. She gripped his arms. I'm not running. I'm not hiding in some distant village while you fight my battles. This is my blood they want. My death they're planning. I have a right to face them. You have a right to live. Then help me do both. She met his gaze, unflinching. Teach me. Train me. Let me be part of the strategy instead of the prize everyone's fighting over. Calder stared at her. She felt his resistance through the Bond, the primal urge to protect, to shelter, to lock her away where nothing could touch her. But beneath that, growing stronger. Respect. Helwyn is going to love you, he muttered. Is that a yes? He kissed her forehead. You're terrifying and I'm in awe of you. I'll take it. Revna's army arrived at sunset. Senna stood on the eastern tower, their tower now, and watched the torches spread across the valley like a disease. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Too many for Ironhaven's garrison to fight directly. She called in every ally she had. Calder's voice was grim as he joined her. Morkant. Voss. 3 minor lords I didn't even know were compromised. How long can the fortress hold? Days. Weeks, maybe, if we ration carefully. He paused. But she's not planning a siege. And Fenric? Senna asked, dread pooling in her stomach. Calder's jaw tightened. Gone. Someone freed him during the night, one of Revna's spies, most likely. We found 2 guards dead near the cells. Before she could respond, an arrow arced over the walls, trailing fire. It struck the courtyard below, and a parchment fluttered free. A warrior retrieved it, bringing it to Calder. His face went pale as he read. What does it say? He handed her the parchment. Give us the Ashbourne witch by dawn, and your people will be spared. Refuse, and we'll burn Ironhaven to bedrock. Every man, woman, and child inside will die screaming. You have until sunrise. Revna Senna's blood ran cold. She's bluffing. She can't breach these walls. She doesn't need to breach them. Calder's voice was hollow. Ironhaven's wards protect against magical intrusion, but Fenric has been here for years. If he sabotaged the eastern defenses, you think he did? I think my cousin was thorough. Calder crumpled the parchment. And I think Revna is counting on me to sacrifice everyone I've sworn to protect for the sake of one woman. Senna felt the weight of those words settle into her bones. One woman. Her. She looked at the torches below. At the fortress full of servants and warriors and families who'd welcomed her without question. At Brielle, who'd been so kind. At Helwyn, who'd already lost so much. Calder. Her voice was steady despite the trembling in her chest. If I surrender. No. If I surrender, they'll have what they want. The siege ends. Your people live. And you die. He grabbed her shoulders, his grip almost painful. Do you think I'd let you walk into that? Do you think I could live with myself afterward? Could you live with yourself if they all burn because of me? They won't burn. I won't let them. How? Tears blurred her vision. How do you stop an army with a broken ward and a skeleton garrison? Calder was silent. Through the bond, she felt his desperation, the impossible calculus of a king trying to save everyone and knowing he couldn't. Then Helwyn's voice cut through the darkness. You don't stop them? The old woman emerged from the stairwell, her eyes gleaming with something that might have been madness or brilliance. You go around them. She held up a ring of ancient keys. There's a passage, under the mountain. My grandmother built it 300 years ago, for exactly this situation. She looked at Senna. You wanted to fight, girl? Here's your chance. The passage leads behind their lines, right to Revna's command tent. A direct strike, Calder breathed. Cut off the head. And the body falls. Helwyn tossed him the keys. 20 warriors. No more, or you'll be spotted. Move fast, strike hard, and end this before dawn. Senna met Calder's eyes. Together? He didn't hesitate. Together. The passage was ancient, narrow, and absolutely terrifying. Senna followed Calder through the darkness, 20 warriors behind them, torchlight flickering against walls carved with symbols she didn't recognize. The air smelled of earth and age, and something older. Magic, maybe, lingering from whoever had built this place. They emerged behind the enemy camp, exactly as Helwyn had promised. The chaos of the siege worked in their favor. Everyone's attention was focused on the fortress, on the coming assault. No one expected an attack from behind. They moved like shadows. Calder led them through the maze of tents, silent and lethal. Guards fell without raising alarms. The bond between Senna and Calder thrummed with shared purpose. She knew where he was going, what he was planning, without a word being spoken. Then they reached Revna's tent. It was larger than the others, crimson silk blazing with golden embroidery. 2 guards stood at the entrance. Calder's warriors took them down in seconds. The bond screamed a warning. Something was wrong. "Wait," Senna whispered, grabbing Calder's arm. "I feel—" Then she saw it. Brielle's cloak, discarded near the tent entrance, stained with blood. "They knew we were coming," Calder breathed. "Fenric must have told them about the passage." Inside, Revna was waiting. She sat in an ornate chair, dressed for war, her silver hair piled high and her smile cold as winter. Fenric stood beside her, his escape confirmed. And between them, bound to a chair with iron chains. "Brielle," Senna breathed. The copper-haired girl looked up, terror in her eyes. Blood trickled from a cut on her temple. "Ah, there she is." Revna rose gracefully. "The Ashborn witch, come to surrender herself. How noble." "Let her go." Calder's voice was ice. "This is between us." "Is it?" Revna tilted her head. "You see, nephew, I've learned something interesting about mate bonds. They're terribly inconvenient. All that shared emotion, shared sensation, it makes kings do stupid things." She nodded to Fenric. He pressed a blade to Brielle's throat. "Here's what's going to happen," Revna continued. "Your little Ashborn is going to complete the bond with my son instead of you. The magic doesn't care about love, just blood and consent. And once she's mated to Fenric, the Ashborn power passes to my lineage." "I won't," Senna started. "You will." Revna's smile sharpened. "Or I'll kill every person in that fortress, starting with your precious friend here." The blade bit into Brielle's skin. She whimpered. Senna felt Calder's rage through the bond, volcanic, barely contained. But they were surrounded now. More guards had filtered in. Revna had planned for this. "Choose," Revna said. "Bond with my son or watch everyone die." Senna's mind raced. She thought about the stories her mother had told her about the Ashborn bloodline, about the old magic that flowed through her veins, about why Revna wanted it so badly. "The bond doesn't work that way," Calder had said. "It's a bridge, not a chain." But what if the bridge could be weaponized? "Fine," Senna said. "I'll do it." "Senna," Calder's voice was anguished. "No." She turned to him, willing him to understand. "Trust me." She saw it in his eyes, the struggle, the fear, the desperate hope. Then slowly he nodded. Senna approached Fenric. He released Brielle, shoving her aside, his eyes gleaming with triumph. "Knew you'd see reason," he said. "The bond is simple. Just take my hand and accept." Senna took his hand and poured every ounce of Ashborn magic she possessed into him. The effect was instantaneous. Fenric screamed as golden light erupted from their joined hands, but it wasn't bonding magic. It was rejection magic. The same power that had let her ancestors detect poison, see through illusions, recognize lies. She turned it outward. Fenric's illusions shattered. Every glamour he'd ever worn, every lie he'd ever told, every dark secret he'd hidden. All of it ripped free, flooding the tent with visions. Fenric poisoning Calder's father. Fenric arranging the accidents that killed the other Omegas. Fenric feeding information to enemies. Fenric planning Calder's assassination once Revna secured the throne. The warriors saw it all. Revna saw it all. "No," Fenric wailed, collapsing as the magic burned through him. "That wasn't— you can't—" Senna released him, stepping back. Her legs shook, her vision blurred, but she stayed upright. "The Ashborn bloodline," she said quietly, "doesn't just detect lies, it reveals them." She turned to Revna. "Your turn." Revna's face twisted with rage. She lunged for Senna, a dagger appearing in her hand. Calder moved faster. His blade caught hers, deflecting it. They clashed once, twice, and then Calder's sword was at her throat. "It's over," he said. "Your conspiracy is exposed. Your allies have seen the truth. Surrender, and I'll give you a trial." For a moment, Revna's composure cracked. She looked at her son, writhing on the ground, at the warriors who'd turned against her, at the king she'd tried to manipulate since he was a child. Then she laughed. "You think you've won? The Southern Lords will never accept an Ashborn queen. The realm will tear itself apart." "Maybe." Calder's voice was cold. "But it'll be my realm, not yours." He looked at his warriors. "Take her." Dawn broke over Ironhaven, soft and golden. Senna stood on the eastern tower, wrapped in a fur cloak, watching the enemy camp dissolve below. Without Revna's command, without Fenric's lies, the alliance had crumbled. Lords who'd marched for conquest were now negotiating surrender, desperate to distance themselves from the conspiracy. It was over. Footsteps behind her. She didn't need to turn. "You should be sleeping," Calder said, joining her at the parapet. "You drained yourself completely." "I'll sleep later." She leaned into him as his arm wrapped around her. "I wanted to see the sunrise." They stood in comfortable silence, watching light spread across the mountains. "What you did in that tent," Calder said finally. "I've never seen magic like that." "Neither had I." Senna shook her head. "I didn't know I could do it until I tried. I just remembered what my mother told me once, that Ashborn power responds to truth. I thought, if I pushed hard enough..." "You destroyed him." There was wonder in Calder's voice. Not physically, but completely. Every lie he'd ever told exposed for everyone to see. It seemed fitting. He turned her to face him. In the morning light, his eyes were more gold than gray. "I almost lost you," he said quietly. "When you took his hand, when I thought you were going to bond with him. I would never. I know that now." His hands tightened on her waist. "But in that moment, I realized something." "What?" "That I can't do this without you." He pressed his forehead to hers. "I've been alone for so long, Senna. Carrying the weight of the crown, the search for your bloodline, the constant threat of betrayal. I convinced myself I didn't need anyone, that needing people was weakness. And now? Now I know that needing you isn't weakness. It's the only thing keeping me human." He pulled back to look at her. "I love you. Not because of your blood or your power or what you can do for the realm. I love you. The woman who held her head high when everyone despised her. Who kissed me first because she was tired of being careful. Who saved my people by trusting magic she'd never used." Senna's eyes burned. Calder, "Let me finish." He took a breath. "After the trial, after everything settles, you'll be free to leave if you want. The bond can be managed, suppressed. I won't trap you here." "Is that what you think I want? To leave?" "I think you deserve the choice." She laughed, half sobbing. "You impossible man." She kissed him, pouring everything she felt into it. The fear, the hope, the love that had grown faster than either of them expected. When she pulled back, she was smiling. "I'm not leaving. Not now. Not ever." She cupped his face. "I love you too, Calder. And I choose this. I choose you." The bond between them blazed, brighter than the sunrise, sealing something that had been inevitable from the moment their eyes met across that altar. "Then marry me," he said. "Properly. Not because tradition demands it, but because I want everyone to know you're mine and I'm yours." "Is that a proposal or a command?" He grinned. "Which one gets me a yes?" Senna pretended to consider. "The proposal. Definitely the proposal. Then I'm proposing. Then I'm accepting." He swept her into his arms, spinning her around until she was dizzy and laughing. From somewhere below, Helwyn's voice drifted up. "Finally. I was beginning to think I'd die before he worked up the nerve." They both laughed, holding each other as the sun rose higher. The trial was swift. Revna and Fenric stood before the assembled lords. every crime laid bare by Senna's revelation. The evidence was overwhelming. Not just Senna's magic, but documents, witnesses, the confession of guards who'd been promised amnesty. The verdict was unanimous: guilty of treason, murder, and conspiracy against the crown. They were executed at noon. Senna didn't watch. She'd seen enough of Revna's cruelty to last a lifetime. Instead, she sat with Brielle in the garden, helping her friend recover from her ordeal. "You saved my life," Brielle said, touching the healing cut on her temple. "If you hadn't done that magic thing, you would have done the same for me. I would have tried." Brielle smiled weakly. "But I don't have ancient bloodline powers. You have something better." Senna squeezed her hand. "You have courage. You didn't break, even when Fenric threatened you. That matters." Brielle's eyes welled up. "Will you really be queen? Officially?" "Apparently." Senna shook her head. "I still can't quite believe it." "I can." Brielle's smile strengthened. "You'll be brilliant." The bonding ceremony was held under the full moon, exactly 3 weeks after Senna had been dragged to an altar expecting to die. This time, everything was different. She wore midnight blue silk that matched Calder's formal leathers, wildflowers braided into her hair. No chains, no curses, no fear. Just the man she loved waiting at the altar, his eyes shining with something that looked like wonder. Helwyn performed the ceremony, her voice steady despite the tears glistening on her weathered cheeks. "Do you, Calder of House Valdrin, take this woman as your bonded mate? To cherish, protect, and honor for all the days of your life?" "I do." His voice rang clear. "And do you, Senna of the Ashbourne, take this man as your bonded mate? To cherish, protect, and honor for all the days of your life?" Senna looked at him. This king who'd seen through her curse, who'd offered her freedom again and again, who'd loved her when she was still learning to love herself. "I do." The bond completed with a rush of warmth and light. Not a chain, just as he'd promised. A bridge. A connection. A home. Calder kissed her, and the crowd erupted in cheers. Later, much later, they lay tangled together in their chambers. "Tell me something," Calder murmured, tracing patterns on her shoulder. "Something I don't know." Senna thought for a moment. "When Revna first cursed me, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd never be seen again, never be wanted, never matter to anyone. And now? Now I realize the curse was a gift." She propped herself up to look at him. "Because you saw me anyway, not despite what I looked like, but because of who I was underneath. You saw the truth when everyone else saw the lie." His hand cupped her cheek. "You would have been extraordinary with or without me. Maybe, but I'm glad I don't have to find out." He pulled her down for another kiss, soft and sweet. "Your turn," she said against his lips. "Tell me something." "I knew," he admitted. "Before the ceremony, before I even saw through the glamour, there was something about you that called to me. The way you walked. The way you didn't cower. I think my wolf recognized you before I did." "Love at first sight?" "Recognition." He smiled. "Like coming home to a place I'd never been." Senna settled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Steady, strong, perfectly synchronized with her own through the bond. She thought about the girl she'd been. Scrubbing floors in Revna's household, dreaming of freedom, never imagining she'd find it in the arms of a king. She'd been sold as a monster, offered up to die. Instead, she'd been claimed. Instead, she'd been loved. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me." Calder pressed a kiss to her hair. "Thank you for letting me." Outside, the moon hung full and bright over Ironhaven. Somewhere in the fortress, servants were clearing the celebration. Warriors were toasting their king's happiness. Helwyn was probably critiquing the wine selection. And in the highest tower, wrapped in warmth and love and the promise of tomorrow, Senna finally understood what it meant to belong. She'd walked into that great hall expecting death. She'd found something infinitely better. Where are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. I love hearing your thoughts. And if you'd like to support me, please subscribe. It's free, and it helps more people hear these stories.